Kia ora, good morning. Welcome to the Eye in the Sky Show podcast. Today, I would like to talk about something that might be seen as quite controversial, but I am 100% sure that I am right. I have no doubts that I am speaking the truth, and a lot of people might not like to hear what I have to say, but I don't care because I think I am absolutely right on my hypothesis of this next subject matter. So, I would like to talk about the Voynich Manuscript. We all know kind of what it is. I sort of knew that it was there, but I didn't look into it because I don't like to pre-research anything. With all my shows where I was doing time jumping in the National Trust places, before all of this hoo-ha kicked off, and any work that I do that I don't like to work on anything that I know a lot about, because I'm an autodidact, so I learn as I go. And I don't want people to ever say, well, you knew about this before, so this is this and blah blah blah. I'm trying to prove the existence of our connection to the atomic frequency. Everything I am as a scientist, as a theoretical physicist, as an occult scientist, as an evolutionary theorist, is all to prove a point that God is real, although God to me isn't someone who sits on a cloud with a white beard. To me, God is the atom. The atom creates everything in the universe and stores memory of all time within within its atomic frequency, and that some people are able to access that frequency and read the transmissions that are linked between all time, because time exists all at once. The past, present, and future happen all at once, and some of us are able to connect to the neurons of the universe's brain and read the signals that are being handed between ancestors and time, and then translate that into language or works of art or books or whatever. And when the Voynich manuscript popped up in my little thing today, it's like I couldn't. It was in one of those top 25 unexplained mysterious blah blah blahs, and when it popped up, like I couldn't stop thinking about it. And because I am an intuitive podcaster, everything I do is done intuitively. I follow the links, I follow the tracks, I connect the dots. I put the puzzle pieces together to form, the picture that is going to end up being my podcast. But I don't know what I'm going to do before I hit record. It's just that, I don't pre-plan my podcast, is what I'm trying to say. Every podcast that I have is because something was presented to me intuitively, where I just knew this is what Atom or God wants me to talk about next. I talk on behalf of the universe. I talk on behalf of our ancestors, on behalf of victims, on behalf of time and that, because I'm trying to teach people a new way of seeing things, because the way that I'm trying to present it to people of varying ages and intellects and religions and faiths and cultures and that, is to try and get them not to be afraid of the paranormal, but to break out of the constructs of the matrix of what they, learned behavior, what's passed down from generation to generation to be learned behavior, to open their minds and broaden their horizons. Because when you open your mind and you change your perspective, you change your life. And I'm trying to help people ascend past the lives and the constructs that they thought they knew, to a broader horizon of potentials and possibilities for themselves, because we have, as a bundle of atoms and cells, an untapped potential to be something so far greater than what we think we can be. And so, when you have these ascensions, and, God says when you master your virtues and add hope and faith, you are granted supernatural powers. The Bible in itself is considered a book of, supernatural content. But as an occult scientist, it's my job to bring a language that is hidden from the rest of the world, because the word occult means knowledge of the hidden or secrets of the hidden, to bring that language to you so that you can understand it in order to learn from it and grow, so that you can have ascensions and become better people, and pay off a ton of karmic debt and ancestral debt, and ascend to earn your place within the atomic frequency, where in order to do so you have to be of a higher pure vibration, and get supernatural powers, basically, like me. And so that's why I document everything, my entire process, to prove that what I'm saying is true, because I started out as this morbidly obese, heavy drinking, relying on a lot of prescription medication, fat, slovenly, swore like a trooper, uncouth lump of lard who had no potential or outlook to be anything other than someone who was on a fast decline to an early death. And it was only because of my son saying something to me when he was like 6, 7 years old that woke me up. And so I started losing weight, and through losing weight and exercising and making better choices and removing toxicity and toxic behaviors and toxic people from my life, I ascended more and more and more. And so that's why, I started documenting everything, because I wanted to show people my process so that they would know what to do should they choose to want to better themselves. And then if they are lucky enough to be chosen for an ascension, this was the step by step of how it was going to happen. This is what was going to happen, how it was all going to go, so that nothing is new or surprising to you. I didn't want anyone to have these ascensions without knowing what was going to happen to them or why. Like I did, I had to figure it out as I went. Autodidact. We're self-educating. We learn as we go. And so, everything that I have on my social media and that is to help people who are on an ascending path understand what's happening to them, so that they're not afraid of it, and try and run from it, because the alternative of not having an ascension is to have a descension, and that takes you down a completely different and dark path. Now, the Voynich manuscripts. When I looked at the drawings in there, I knew immediately what it was. I knew immediately what it was. And people might find it controversial, but you don't have to take anything I say to be gospel. But I think I'm 100% accurate on my hypothesis, and it's food for thought. And so I'd like to share with you what I think the Voynich manuscript is. So they carbon dated it. It turned up at a bookstore in 1921, and they've spent ever since pretty much trying to figure out what the language is. Some say, well, it's kind of Latin, it's kind of Italian, it's kind of French. There's a bit of German, there's a bit of this. Like it's an unknown language, and they can't decipher it. They carbon dated it to be between 1404 and 1438. So Renaissance Italy. And this is important to note. So when I looked at the writing and was reading all these like etymologists and their opinions on what they thought it was saying, and trying to decipher the language in there, I just kind of giggled to myself, because I realized that the language is Babel. I talk about Babel speak in on some of my Instagram posts. Babel speak is the language of the occult. It's a hidden language that you create. Everyone's Babel is different. I have my own Babel language. If you read a lot of my stuff, you're going to look at it and think, what the hell is she talking about? Like my word biorhythmics, that's one of my language. That's one of my words. That's one of my words that I know what it means. I know what I mean when I say it. But to people who don't know the language of the occult, they're going to look at a lot of what I say and think, like, is she nuts? Like, none of this makes any sense, but it makes perfect sense to me. It sounds like gobbledygook. It sounds like gibberish, and it's even accused of being gibberish, and nonsensical speak. But I know exactly what it means, and I know exactly what that person, the author, is trying to say, and it's very controversial. But I will explain it now. What I want to do is explain to you The word Babel, to witches and Wiccan, that someone who is religious, when they get taken over by the Holy Spirit, they speak in tongues. Okay, Babel is an occult version of speaking in tongues. And the word Babel means to utter sounds and words imperfectly, instinctively, or without meaning. Babel was a word that started being used in the 13th century, so the 1200s, and it is derived from the word Babylon, which is a Dutch word. Babylon comes from the word Babel, which means a confusion of sounds or voices, because Babylon in Dutch means chit-chat, like nonsense, talking nonsense, and it comes from the word Babel, which means a confusion of sounds or voices. And the word Babel is also the Semitic name of the city of Babylon, where the construction to the Tower of Heaven was attempted, and where the confusion of tongues took place. In the book of Genesis is where they talk about it. Because these people thought that they could build this tower to the kingdom of heaven and earn their place beside God in the kingdom of heaven, without having earned the right to ascend. They were trying to fake an ascension. And, I talk the word of God. They were false prophets and, fake people of the cloth, people who pretended to be servants of God, but, they were actually sinners. And they did things against God that angered him. So they thought they could fake an ascension, basically, by building this tower. And God was like, oh, hell no. Like, you don't get to fake your connection to me. I know your heart. I know if it's pure or not. I know if you're telling the truth or not. So I'm going to tear your tower down. And as a consequence of which, I'm going to make you all speak in different languages so you can't understand each other. And that's where Babel speak comes from. And why apparently we have different languages all around the world. And the author knew this. The author of the manuscript knew this. Interestingly, the tarot and the tarot cards, the tower and the tarot cards, one of the meanings for that is people who fake ascensions and feeling the wrath of God coming down and striking his lightning from Zeus striking his bolt of lightning down to tear the tower down of people who try to claim to be servants of God and prophets of God when they're not. They're faking ascensions, they're faking their kindness, they're faking their purity, and then God strikes them down with karma or karmic lessons. And yeah, that's one of the definitions of the tower and the tarot card. Now, the controversy comes from the fact that Leonardo da Vinci is known to be the first person. One of the things that he used to do is autopsies. He had access to cadavers. The church granted him access to cadavers so that he could do autopsies. And he was given the distinguished honour of being the first person to identify that the heart is not connected to the genitals. Because up until then, it was believed that, your private parts, your arousal, was based on that you had a vein or something that went from your heart to your genitals. And so you were attracted to, when you became aroused by someone, it's because, your heart triggered that attraction. And as a result, it would engorge and excite, the down belows. And through his study of human anatomy, he realized that the heart and the genitals were not connected in any way, shape, or form. Now, he lived from 1452 to 1519, and the Voynich manuscripts are from 1404 to 1438, so quite a bit before the birth of Leonardo da Vinci. And in the manuscripts, you clearly see they have done a drawing, a childlike drawing, of a man standing in water emotions, intuition, because this person was clearly very knowledgeable in the language of the occult. They were more than likely a witch, would be, what we would call a witch. And this man is standing with their heart, with their hands, their arms through the ventricles of the heart. And you can even see that they have done drawings of cells, the human cells. And what they are clearly saying is that a man's going to love who a man's going to love, that you cannot control someone's genetics, that cellular memory is something that we have no control over, and that genetics and DNA have everything to do with how a person is born, and that God is the only one that has the say in who and how a person is born to be. Because I really truly believe that the Voynich manuscripts, I don't know whether this person worked for the church, worked in the church, was a man of the cloth, or whether they were just somebody who lived on the fringes, who knew that if they got caught they would be executed. I think that the Voynich manuscripts is not only like a record or a diary of this person's discoveries and understanding of herbology and botany and astronomy and genetics and all that sort of thing, chemistry and all that, for the purposes of healing and ascending and being closer to the gods and ancestors. I think this person is giving a 2 thumbs up to the church and their stance on witchcraft and homosexuality. And then I think what happened was, because they're from the same region, sort of same, they're from Italy, just like Leonardo da Vinci. I think Leonardo da Vinci had access to this manuscript and then took it one step further, but left the politics out of it, because he did a lot of work for the church. He needed the money to further his studies, that they gave him access to cadavers and that, which, like it was illegal to do that sort of thing. But they were willing to turn a blind eye on his homosexuality, on his work with cadavers, and his inventions, his drawings of his inventions and all that, because of the fact that he did such beautiful work for them. And like the church were obsessed with him, like they wanted that they drained him of everything, but he did it because he needed the money. And I went to an exhibit in 2019, which I truly believe was one of my first documented, recorded videos of me doing a time jump, like when I go to the National Trust places, because when I went to his exhibition, I time jumped and I got to see him. And in the video, I came back from the art gallery, and I'm describing everything that I saw, which when I did the research later on, it turns out I was 100% correct in what I had seen. And I think that because Leonardo da Vinci was gay, I think that he took this manuscript one step further. While they were living at a time when they had to hide what they were, I think the manuscripts are basically taunting the church to say, I know things you don't know, like what I do. When you have this language, like I've been able to decipher a hidden language in the Bible that has completely just opened my world and my gift up. Since I have been able to decipher the codes in the Bible, my gift has grown exponentially. My ability to speak English, however, is a subject to be discussed later on, is because I love what I do so much. I love my work. I love bringing this new way of thinking to people, which is why I think he had to hide the language, why he spoke Babel, because he knew that if the church deciphered anything that he said, they would gain access to powers they didn't earn the right to have. They would use it to control the masses and kill people like him, and later on people like Leonardo da Vinci. Because you have to remember, when I did my video on The Conjuring with Bathsheba Sherman, witches were people who could speak multiple languages. They had knowledge that the church couldn't even begin to possibly understand about, herbology and anatomy and astronomy and botany and all that sort of thing. You know, they knew how to take plants and take food and minerals and vitamins and, you know, certain kinds of water and all that, and use it to heal and grow crops at a time where, you know, there were crop failures. And so they were seen as being demonic and evil because they had this knowledge and this power that the church couldn't understand, and because that made the church angry that they were speaking in languages and Babel speak that they couldn't understand, that they had this knowledge and understanding that churches and scientists and doctors and that were ignorant to because they're closed-minded. I know that well. Um, they were deemed as being evil, and so they were hunted and persecuted, and you know, executed for being witches, when in actual fact they were just smarter than the church. They were smarter than doctors and scientists that, you know, thought that because they studied this stuff and went to that school, or, you know, got this degree, or, you know, because they could remove a limb in like a second sort of thing, that it made them smarter than the uneducated person. But then when these seers and sages and oracles and that started showing up in the villages around, you know, the westernized cultures of Europe, um, they were deemed to be a threat to the church, and therefore they were hunted and persecuted for witchcraft, which then instilled a modern day fear that's still around today, of witches, that is unwarranted and unfair. I'm not talking about, you know, like the modern witch. I'm not talking about them. You got to remove the modern constructs of what people think a witch is not what a real witch is. I'm talking about the ancient practice of the craft. Remember, I said in my Bathsheba Schumann video, the word witch means wise. The word witch means of intelligence. The word Wiccan are derived from the word wick, which means ancient knowledge or ancient wisdom of the ancients. And this language, he's writing, and he's created a language that can't be deciphered by the church and by closed minds, because it is speaking a high frequency of occult language that only those who know the language of the occult would ever possibly begin to understand. He's done drawings of cells, just like in my Instagram post. I've got posts up there where I'm showing examples of cells, how the universe is just made up of a series of cells within cells within cells within cells. And they all run on an atomic pitch, which contains the consciousness of all life in the universe within inside its nucleus. And some of us have the ability to tap into those atoms and understand and read what it's saying. And as soon as I looked at the pages of those manuscripts, it was like it was, I was watching a video. I knew exactly what it was saying. You know, they're talking about astronomy, that, you know, because obviously we have to talk about star placements and that sort of thing. I think this person is talking to God directly, or God is talking through them directly, and that they are handing out secrets of the universe that is only for the very few who have earned the right to understand what it's saying. If you can't speak Babel, you're not going to understand that manuscript. But Leonardo da Vinci took that work one step further, removed the politics from it, because this person is clearly saying the church has no right to say that God says that if you're gay, you're a sin, or that there's something wrong with you. You're gonna love who you're gonna love, and that the heart wants what the heart wants, regardless of whether you're in love with a man and you're a man, or you're in love with a woman and you're a woman. Now, I'm going to put links in the description box below of the video that I made when I came back from the exhibit, but there's also one in there where I talk about Leonardo da Vinci and the Mona Lisa, because I really truly believe that the Mona Lisa is Leonardo da Vinci in drag. And, you know, when they superimpose his face over hers, they match identically. They always say that artists always put a piece of themselves in their artwork. And I think that he dressed in drag, And I think that he hid it, and that's that smirk on his face is because he knew a secret the church didn't know, and people are still, trying to surmise of what they think it is or who they think she is. And I really truly believe that it's Leonardo da Vinci in drag, and that there were a whole series of writers and artists and scientists and geniuses in the Renaissance period who were gay, who had to hide what they were, who hid their homosexuality within a secret language that they put within their work. And with the Voynich manuscripts, they've used the occult to do it, whereas Leonardo da Vinci used like anatomy and biology and all that. So, but if you look at the Voynich manuscript, you'll see that they have clearly drawn human cells, cellular memory, where they're talking about, ancestry and DNA and the paternal, maternal bloodlines, and about being free to love another man because the heart wants what the heart wants, being free to love another woman if that's what the heart wants, that procreation is one thing. Not everybody is here to, procreate genetically, that what you are is handed down from, from father, son, mother to child, um, that sort of thing, and that there's nothing that the church can do about it, and the church doesn't have a right to say that any of it is wrong, because you were executed for being gay back then. In some countries, you still are, and it's wrong, and God says it's wrong, because to say that somebody is wrong for being born LGBT is saying that God made a mistake, and God doesn't make mistakes. It's one of the things that I argue with, people of certain religions about, because nobody has the right to tell God that he is wrong when he created someone gay or lesbian or trans, They are who they are. And so I think that this book is giving the finger to the church, and that they are clearly showing in their own way that they have a connection to a higher power, to a supernatural power that the church couldn't possibly understand, hence why they can't decipher the language. And then Leonardo da Vinci took it one step further, translated it a little bit into his work, and it's basically, he took the politics out of it, and it's very subversive, which you're not going to understand if you can't speak the language of the occult. And, to this day, witches are still persecuted. We're still persecuted for the things that we know. Everything that I am is based on my indigenous roots. But I also had to understand my Scottish and Irish, my French and German ancestry as well, the witchcraft side of it, because a lot of what was taught to me came from, my Western side, my European side. So, you can't be an occult scientist if you can't understand where everyone's coming from. So, I'm just putting that out there. It's food for thought. You don't have to believe anything that I'm saying, but I think I'm 100% correct. If I was able to sit down and go through that book, I'm pretty sure I would be able to decipher everything that he's talking about. It ended up in the hands of somebody later on by the name of Jacob Tempens, who lived from 1575 to 1622. He was described as a Bohemian pharmacist, so clearly he was the doctor for Emperor Rudolph II, and apparently he was given the book by the emperor. So, he was a hippie pharmacist, and he knew that that book contained the knowledge of plants and things that were going to happen in the future, because they are making predictions of the future as well, just like I do. That fascinated the doctor in the hopes that he could decipher it and use that knowledge to practice as a pharmacist and as a doctor. But because nobody could decipher it, because they were all linear thinking and not broad-minded, open-minded thinking, which in order to understand the occult you have to be open-minded. The world isn't just about one religion or one medicine or one practice or one understanding. The world is about all of it, and you have to understand all of it as an occult scientist in order to be able to decipher the language to meet the understanding of the person and their level of understanding from 1 or 2 years old right up to 100 years old, whether they're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, atheist, agnostic, believe in fairy tales. Like it, I have to be able to translate the language of the occult into a way of talking and educating people from all walks of life, from all faiths, from all cultures, of all ages across the world. And this is why that book is written in various languages and various words and, Babel speak, because they did it on purpose to confuse the church, to give two fingers up, and to make sure that only people who understand Babel or Babel would know what it meant, because the knowledge of which, like the hidden books of Moses, the knowledge of which in the wrong hands would be dangerous, especially, if you're a fake prophet, or, you do black magic or the dark arts and that. And so they did it to protect their work and to make sure that only those who would understand it would be able to benefit from it. So I'm just putting it out there. I'm going to have my breakfast now. I started having my breakfast like an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, and I got so excited that I had to drop everything to make this podcast. So I will speak to you later. Enjoy. Ka kite anō.